Thank you, Gino, for that question, and thank you for having me on your program today. Look, I think the opening of this very significant diplomatic facility is a very important marker of the length and breadth of our relationship with Iraq's Kurdish community and its leadership. So I'm very sorry that I can't be there to see it, but I hope to be there in the future. And I think it's going to be a wonderful platform for many activities between the U.S. and the community there. Well, I think the message is the enduring nature of this special relationship that we have with this particular part of Iraq's fabric, of Iraq's society. And it's been a long history. It's been a history between our two peoples and our two sets of leaders that has taken us through many difficult times, through conflict, but also through peaceful times. So I think it's really a demonstration of the U.S. Commitment and faith in the durability of that relationship. Yes, indeed. Our soldiers have fought side by side, and our diplomats and our leaders have worked very closely together in good times as well as difficult times. So I think that's the message. So look, today we are looking at a region, the Middle East, that has been very much changed over these last few years, very dramatically so. The landscape around Iraq has changed dramatically and arguably for the better, but it's still a very important time for leadership from the United States, of course, but also leadership from Iraq's own leaders, be they Kurdistan or Baghdad. You have the events in Syria. We're coming up to the first anniversary of the change, the fall of the Assad regime, and the beginning of a new Syria. And while I know that there are many points of anxiety, perhaps fear, and uncertainty, I think it's really clear that Iraq's own Kurdish leaders are showing quite a bit of leadership and thoughtfulness in the way they are reaching out to Syria's Kurdish leadership and encouraging a kind of movement together back to between Damascus and northeast Syria in a very, what I would say is a very politically mature and astute approach. So I offer that as just one aspect of why the US has time and again found that they could rely on Iraq's Kurdish leaders to demonstrate real leadership. Look, I think that the relationship between Washington and Iraqi Kurdistan continues to grow and to deepen, and that's exactly why you see a senior official come from Washington to preside over the opening of this consulate. And indeed, it's why we pursued such a project over the course of many years in Erbil. So I think it's clear that that relationship is sound between Washington and Iraq and Iraqi Kurdistan. I think it's also clear that, to me at least, that Iraqi Kurdish leaders are also trying to demonstrate their own commitment to stabilization of their neighbor, Syria. And part of that stabilization piece is how Syria's Kurdish community and its leaders, how they come back together again with Damascus. And this is a very sensitive, politically sensitive issue. Yes, I believe so. That requires effort on both sides. And that requires effort and commitment on the part of Kurdish leaders, Kurdish community, journalists, civil society leaders. And of course, that requires a commitment to deepen that relationship using that platform of that new consulate on the part of Washington. It's been a long time in coming, this building, but it's very emblematic, I think, of the direction in which the US would like to see that relationship continue to grow. I would say it's a very strong relationship. Yes, I would even say it's strategic. And look, again, I I look at how Iraqi Kurdistan operates and its leaders operate not only within the domestic Iraqi context, which is quite important, and especially now as coalition discussions are accelerating and the voters want to know who is going to be the prime minister, but also who is going to be the speaker, who's going to be the president, who is going to fill out the cabinet. So Iraq's Kurdish leaders are very important in that domestic context, but they are also important in the regional context. So I don't know if it changes it. Perhaps it just offers another kind of building block for that relationship. As I said, over the course of many years now, and through many different configurations of cabinets and coalitions, Iraq's Kurdish leaders have played a very important role. And I know that Washington looks to them to continue to play such a role. Sometimes that's more difficult than other times because there is disunity in the Kurdish House. I think that's unfortunately still the case. But in any event, Kurdistan's leaders will play a critical role in bringing to the voters a good, productive, responsive government, a coalition that will be responding to the needs of the Iraqi voters. And I know that they are impatient to see the results of these discussions. So I think it's been very clear from the public comments of President Trump and Secretary Rubio and other members of the administration that they want very much to see Baghdad continue to make progress in the effort to, how shall I put it, recover, regain, expand Iraq's own sovereignty away from the pressures of Iran, but also deal with the pressures and the incursions on Iraqi sovereignty that are made by these militias. You suffered in Kurdistan a terrible attack on the energy facility in Hormuz. And this is an attack that nobody has claimed. Nobody is certain. The public is not certain who did it, why they did it. But this is a kind of terrorism that is it's completely unacceptable, and it eats away at the stability and security of Iraq. Well, the greatest challenge is to come up with a formula, not just the prime minister, but the speaker, the president, and the cabinet itself that is truly committed to the betterment of the Iraqi voters. That is to say, that they are following the will of the voters, not any foreign governments, not their neighbor, not the militias. So you've heard the Trump administration speak out again and again about this issue of the militias. And I think it's a really critical one because they are vehicles of corruption. They are vehicles of violence. And one thing that is clear, a lot of Iraqis turned out to vote this time. It was a much higher percentage than analysts had predicted. That tells you they are trying to get across a message. They need jobs. They need security and stability. They need to be able to find houses that they can afford. They need to fend for the future of their children. And so this is what the US wants, that kind of responsive government. Look, I have followed closely the efforts of Prime Minister Soudani to lay out a vision, a domestic vision, and to pursue it methodically. Whether it's looking after farmers or looking after job seekers, looking after water issues. And also, he has pursued a very, I think, largely successful effort of connecting Iraq back into its neighborhood. He, like prime ministers before him, have had their efforts periodically undermined or threatened by these militias. These militias have been a scourge and a threat to every government since the fall of Saddam. No, it's the United States for some years, and I can say this for the whole 4 years of the Biden administration, we were not interested in fighting Iran in Iraq or through Iraq. What we wanted to do all the time was to help support the efforts of the government to increase sovereignty, stability, security, the three elements. Sometimes that meant pushing the government to do things that were difficult because they were receiving pressures from Iran. But the US stands fully for Iraqi sovereignty, for the ability of the government in Baghdad or in Erbil to make decisions on behalf of their people, not for the good of their neighbor, but for the good of the Iraqi people, for the Iraqi Kurdish people. I think the Trump administration largely wants the same thing. They may speak more aggressively, but I think it's the same thing. Okay, well, that's been the expression in the region for 22 years now. And what I would say is Iraqis have choice. Iraqis have agency. The political chieftains who are now sitting and deliberating over the question of who will be prime minister, they all have choices to make. The question is, to whose benefit are they working? Will they put Iraq first and the needs of the Iraqi people first? Or are they going to be following a different policy under pressure or at the behest of Iran? Iraq and Iraq's leaders have full agency to make their decisions. And so that expression is really old and outdated. That's absolutely true. And over the course of the last 5 or 6 years, we've seen a number of terrible attacks on Iraqi Kurdistan and civilians killed. And sometimes these militias accept responsibility and sometimes they hide. Most often they hide. It's terrible. It's a terrible assault on the Iraqi people, on the Iraqi Kurdish people, and it's really unacceptable. It will take political courage from Iraq's own leaders to confront these groups and to compel them to hand over their arms to the central government or to the central government and to follow the direction of the government. There should be no armed militias that follow a political leadership or follow another country. I don't know, but what I can say is that there are enormous demands for US systems by Ukraine and by other countries that have suffered a constant kind of threat from drones or other means of attack. Saudi Arabia was one such country that over the course of years suffered hundreds and hundreds of attacks by Yemen's Houthis. So there's a huge demand for those systems. But when you try to deal with a domestic threat in that way, you're not really dealing with it. The militias are Iraqi. They are Iraqi citizens. They should be confronted, arrested, detained, if they will not fall in and follow the direction of the government. It's crazy to put up an air defense system against a domestic threat. It's a symbol. It's a demonstration of the depth of that relationship and the fact that we expect it to continue into the future and only deepen and expand. I knew you were going to turn that question that way. And that's a question I can't really answer. These are issues that, of course, must be solved peacefully and in a negotiated way. And we would respect whatever is the will of the Iraqi people, be they Kurdish or otherwise, as to how that develops in the future. But we very much value that relationship that we have. I can answer it very honestly. We had a very significant disagreement in 2017 over this matter, and it was a painful issue then, and it was an issue, the referendum, that was not going to be settled peacefully by simply declaring independence did not guarantee that it would be a peaceful secession, and we don't want to see bloodshed.